The roar of a dirt bike engine cut through the Saturday morning air like a chainsaw through silk. I was carrying my coffee outside to check my rose bushes when I stopped dead. There, squarely in the middle of my perfectly manicured front lawn, was a muddy orange dirt bike. Its knobby tires were already carving dark gouges into the grass I'd spent 3 years nurturing. Standing next to it was Jake, the 17-year-old son of our HOA president, Karen Martinez. He looked at me with a smirk that made my blood pressure spike. "What's the problem, mister?" he asked, dripping with entitlement. "My mom runs the HOA. What are you going to do about it?" I'd lived in Willowbrook Estates for 5 years. I followed every rule. I read the 57-page handbook cover to cover. I was the perfect neighbor. But Jake? He thought my private property was his personal motocross track. I sent a formal complaint to the HOA board that afternoon. Photos of the damage, timestamps, the works. I expected a professional response. What I got was an email from Karen that made my jaw clench. "Dear Mr. Thompson, I find these accusations to be unfounded and potentially libelous. I would advise you to exercise extreme caution when making accusations against board members' families. Perhaps your time would be better spent ensuring your own compliance with regulations." Over the next 3 days, Jake grew bolder. He'd park his bike on my lawn while visiting friends. He'd rev the engine outside my window during breakfast. On Thursday, I tried reasoning with him one last time. "Jake, this has to stop. It's going to cost hundreds to repair this grass." He mocked me. "Maybe if you weren't such a cheapskate, you could afford better grass. My mom says you're just a troublemaker." That night, I went to the electronics store. I didn't need the HOA's permission to buy a 4K security camera. Friday afternoon, the camera proved its worth. Jake arrived with 2 friends. They spent nearly an hour doing wheelies and spinouts on my lawn. Jake performed an elaborate skid, a perfect arc of torn mud, then stood up on his bike seat and took a mock bow toward my front door. He knew I was watching. He just didn't realize I was recording. I downloaded the footage and burned multiple copies. But I didn't send them to Karen. I was done playing games in her kingdom. Saturday morning, I called the police. Sergeant Rodriguez arrived within 2 hours. I showed him the laptop. "This is clear-cut property damage," the sergeant said. "And since he's been warned before, we can escalate this to criminal mischief." As if on cue, the brop-brop of the orange dirt bike echoed around the corner. Jake came tearing down the street, completely oblivious to the police cruiser in my driveway. When he saw the officers, he tried to turn, but Sergeant Rodriguez stepped into the street. "Jake Martinez, stop the bike." Jake's face went pale. He looked about 12 years old the moment Officer Kim pulled out the handcuffs. The neighborhood emerged from their houses. Mrs. Chun, the Johnsons, everyone was watching. And then, the finale, Karen came running out of her house in a bathrobe and slippers. "What are you doing to my son?" she screamed. "I demand you release him. I am the president of this HOA." Sergeant Rodriguez didn't even flinch. "Ma'am, your son is under arrest for criminal mischief. Your position in the HOA has no bearing on criminal charges." Karen pointed a shaking finger at me. "He's been targeting my family for weeks. He's the one who should be arrested." Officer Kim closed the patrol car door with Jake inside. "Ma'am, we have high-definition video of your son destroying this man's property. If you continue to interfere, you'll be charged with obstruction." The police report totaled over $800 in damage. Jake pleaded guilty. Community service. Probation. Full restitution. But the real show was the emergency HOA meeting 2 weeks later. The community center was packed. People were tired of Karen's micromanagement, and now they had the leverage. Patricia Wells, another board member, stood up. "We cannot have a president whose family flagrantly violates the very rules she enforces on others. I call for an immediate resignation." Karen tried to defend herself. She claimed I set him up. But her voice cracked. She looked around the room and saw 23 neighbors staring back in stunned, judgmental silence. The vote was unanimous. Even her closest ally voted for her removal. Karen stood up so fast her chair toppled over. The crash echoed through the room like a gunshot. "You'll all regret this," she screamed, her composed facade completely shattered. "I'll sue every single one of you for conspiracy." She stormed out, but the threats sounded hollow. The lawsuits never came. 3 months later, Karen and Jake quietly moved out of the neighborhood. I spent that Sunday morning out in my front yard. No dirt bikes. No braps. Just the sound of the wind and the sight of new green grass finally filling in those dark gouges. Willowbrook Estates is finally quiet.
And my roses?
They've never looked better.